Hi guys, and welcome to episode 7 of Real Estate in Real Life. For anyone who's newly joining the podcast and watching for the first time, what we're trying to do is give a transparent, raw and authentic look at real estate and real life. So we're sitting down with some of our brokers. Some of them have been in the business only 6 months. Some of them have been in the business for 6 years. Some are male, some are female, and they come from all different walks of life. But while having these sit downs, you're learning a lot. And very excited. Today we're joined with Rose Blemons. She is one of the top agents in Jumeirah Golf Estates and has been in real estate in Dubai for around about 2.5 years. From strength to strength, selling properties that are some crazy prices, and definitely a top performer over here at White & Co. So we're very blessed to have her. Anyway, we'll get on with the show. So hi Rose, thanks for joining me here.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. The first question that I've got for you, Rose, is what was life like growing up in the UK? What sort of jobs did you do, and what was life like?
It's so funny that you've just said that in that way, because just the other day, me and a friend, we said, let's go through every job that we ever had. And I've got to be honest with you, it was a bit of a high number for me. Yeah. I think I got to like 22 or something. Yeah. I'm talking about like jobs from being like,
odd jobs.
I'm talking like literally from day one. Do you know what I mean? The pub job, the waitress, all of these things that I've done over the years. But I suppose life growing up was very northern, you know, a lot of cups of tea and toast. Yeah. I certainly didn't have a physique like I did when I got a bit older, and I realised that, you know, I really wanted to kind of break out of that small town. I don't think there's anything wrong with that kind of life, but I just knew it wasn't for me. It never was, you know. I wasn't really interested in doing the whole buy a terrace house and then just have children and stay there. You know, I went to London at 17, and I think, you know, once I did London, it was kind of like I was always sort of looking for something else. Yeah. That being said, I think that I came to Dubai originally in my 20s, and I actually didn't enjoy being in Dubai. But I think that I look back now and I realise that I didn't really see Dubai for what it was, because I was in my 20s and I was a little bit lost at the time. And actually what Dubai is a fantastic place for opportunity. If you're prepared to work hard, then you basically can succeed very quickly in a much shorter space of time, I would say. Yeah.
Amazing. That's such a wonderful answer, and I definitely agree. And it's interesting because after sitting down with the past 6 people and now hearing yourself, there's definitely a contrast between people coming here in their 20s and not understanding what Dubai's all about. And, you know, you get the odd people who understand that you have to get your head down and work hard, and it must just be tough with the distractions. And we'll come on to that a little bit later. So, Rose, you came to Dubai in your 20s, you experienced it, it wasn't for you. What made you come back?
It's not a very straight answer. I don't think any of my
None of your answers are going to be straight.
I'd had a fantastic year in COVID, actually. I was still very much in my fitness career. I've done different things, but I was very much fitness, doing a lot of amazing things in fitness. And it just got to the end of the COVID year, and I decided to sort of run away a little bit and have a break, because it'd been a bit crazy for me. And when I came back, I just had this feeling that in order for me to maybe grow, whether that be that I was going to revisit wellness and have my own wellness business, I really sort of had identified the problems or the blocks that I was having. And one of the things, although it may seem silly, I'm sure many people may resonate with this, and I hope they do. Working with numbers really terrified me all my life. At school, I was A-star student, full marks in papers. You know, last year of school, it was like in the newspaper and all this kind of stuff. Maths, I just about scraped by, and I did enough to get my C. Yeah. But I was so terrified of numbers, and throughout my life, it's become a barrier, you know. If anybody sort of speak to me in percentages or say anything, I just instantly go into like a bit of a, oh my God, I can't do it, you know. So as I got older and I started thinking, well, you know, I want to be that person who has a business, I want to be able to run a business, it would block me, right? So I know it sounds daft, but when I was going along in the fitness journey, I was kind of like, I always get it to a certain point and then it never goes any further. Why? Where are the blocks? And then when I came on the break, I just had this feeling that I wasn't supposed to go back. And I made a phone call to a friend and said, look, I need to take a job in business. I've got a degree, but it's not relevant, right? And it needs to be something that's tangible, that I can work with numbers, but that I can do like now. I need to be able to go now. And she just said to me, would you do real estate? And I said, well, my father's in property, my ex was, I'd do it. She said, it's commission-based only. I said, not an issue, because I already came with money in my bank. I wasn't worried about it. And she went, right. And then she gave me your number, actually.
I remember that meeting.
Yeah. And at that point, like I said, I just literally only went to the 2 interviews. It was you and one other company. And for me, I just went off you, if I'm honest, because I knew that no matter what, I would make it work. And I can honestly say now, even if I decided today that I didn't want to do real estate, I've actually bridged that fear. And I realise now that the numbers, when applied to something that I enjoy or that brings me satisfaction, I can actually do it.
Yeah.
So you see,
Definitely
now
understand.
I'm not saying that I'm,
a whiz.
I'm certainly not saying I'm Stephen Hawkins, all right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not doing like equations and stuff, but I can certainly hit out the percentages off the top of my head. I don't have to think about it anymore. It's not a barrier for me. So, yeah, I mean, I think I've achieved what I wanted to, and now I just see it as actually much more than that. You know?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable about something you were scared about, because, it's something I wouldn't even think of, but there might be people sitting going like, oh, if I have to work with property, the numbers and so on. And like you said, it might resonate with a lot of people. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
No worries.
So you touched on COVID in the last answer, and during COVID they released Selling Sunset, and I've always been a big fan of $1 Million Listing, and they're great shows to watch. But we spend every day doing this, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. How would you say Dubai real estate compares to these shows, and what would you say about it?
I think that it is very difficult when you watch a show like that to actually understand the depth of the job of an agent. Not just the agent, actually. Everybody that is part of the process. In a weird way, a little bit like, take any artist, Beyonce or any group. You see them, right? But you don't really see the level of work that goes in the background in the build up to that show. And it's the same thing. Like, I think the problem is you see them shows and it just looks like the person's really fashionable. They're just getting a call from an amazing client who wants them to sell their property, and now we're at the property, and then
one offer,
you know what I
deal
mean?
done.
And actually, we know it's not like that, but I don't know whether most people actually do realize it's not like that. Yeah. Even clients, I think, oh, you're just the middleman. I had this conversation the other day with one of our sales progression team. We just finished something that was very stressful, okay? And at the end of it, it was like I said, people say there's no need for a middleman, but actually, if there hadn't been me, those two people would have killed each other. Yeah. Quite frankly, they would. Yeah. It would have been war. And there's a reason that we have these, over the years and time in history, business deals, there's a reason that these roles are there. Do you know what I mean? 100%. And I think that's the stuff that you just don't see. You don't see all the build up from finding or connecting with someone, and then how you go about actually trying to put that out there into the world for someone to see, to then respond to. That can sometimes take months.
But that's the thing, I've seen you over the past 2 years start a relationship, and then 8 months later, 7 months later is when you actually put that listing online and then actually sell it, and you're out searching for clients then, because it takes so long to build the trust, and especially at the price point that you work at. And the reason I talk about, Selling Sunset and all that and so on is because when people are watching this, I don't want them to think it is like that. I don't want them to have the false expectation that you come to Dubai, you show a big glamorous mansion, and then suddenly you make $1 million dirham in commission, when the reality isn't that.
No. But I think everyone will have that time in their life, maybe in this job, where for whatever reason, some things just go bam, 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 and it's really great, But then, I mean, even for me right now, just being absolutely transparent as we sit here, I've probably, in a way, maybe didn't realise how good I'd had it for a while, because everything I'd done, it's not like I've done it any differently, but for whatever reason, just the people that I've worked with, the particulars of the deals, right? I've had 2 months of nothing but everything was stress. And it's been a shock. And even though I know I can always try and find a way around it or fix it or resolve it, the stress has been, immense, actually. It's been a shock. And the thing is, it'll either make you or break you. And if you listen to it and you think, oh, I don't want that, then in a way, you probably shouldn't take the role on, because you only appreciate how good it is, obviously, if
when you had the bad
know what
parts
the bad
as well.
is, right? Now, okay, I wouldn't want it to continue like this, but have I learned a lot from these situations? Absolutely. Like, there's certain things now I will never do again, or I will be very vigilant over certain things, and I'll put my foot down more about certain aspects, perhaps.
It's a learning experience.
Yeah, it's definitely that. Every single day in this job is like that.
Yeah. So Rose, it's a commission-based only role, or as I like to call it, performance-based. There's no salary. You don't earn money. You don't eat. You don't pay rent. You don't pay your car. It's tough, and I'm not going to frame it as anything other than that. What keeps you in this industry, or what challenges do you find in this industry?
I think it's a funny question, because I sometimes think, is it what I think is a block, or is it a block? But we're all different, right? So people respond to different people slightly differently.
Yeah.
So challenges, for example, I made quite a strong decision very early on when I moved into JGE that I looked at the demographic there, right? Families, husbands, wives. And, I think you've got to be very conscious about how you present yourself to those people if you want to do well, for example. So I know that in property in Dubai, probably different to maybe some other places in the world, we can be talking to people at 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
It's like zero cut-off time, So I just didn't want to present myself on my profile picture or in a way where that if I was, say, speaking to a male client at that time of night, that it could in any way be misconstrued, that it wasn't about business. Now, that's a decision I made. I personally think that's actually done me good. Yeah. And I've had that feedback. It's funny that over time, certain people did say to me, oh, out of interest, how come the picture that was it? And I said, yeah, I did pick it for that. And they go, very clever. You know what I mean? And it's just little things like that. The fact that I have to think about that. But at the end of the day, you got to acknowledge it, It's just part of the fact that I'm female. And a lot of the time you do tend to still speak to the male. Not always, but quite often it is the way. So that's one thing I would say. Challenges in terms of it's just very, very competitive. Yeah. At the end of the day, you can, like you said earlier, you can work for 8 months to actually get a listing, and then by the time you get it, you might put it up there, and then you might find that it sells. So you go back to square one, or you just make sure that you're constantly trying to spin more plates. Other challenges, I suppose, we've had a lot of changes since I started for you. Changes that I welcome. I think we should go more like the rest of the world, and I think we did need to tighten it a little bit. But, there was that kind of really uncomfortable period of time, I would say, at the start of the year, where we were the educators. So these changes that were coming in place, we were having to educate the seller or the landlord about the changes. There's that moment where they're a bit unsure of whether they think you're telling the truth. They actually think like you're trying to trick them. Yeah. It's just a bit of disclaimer here for anyone that doesn't understand what we're talking. No, it's perfectly fine. It's all right. So in Dubai real estate, the rules used to be that however many agents can list a property, and all you needed to do was a little signature. And we found that brokers or brokerages would maybe be forging these signatures or just putting up what we call fake listings, and it dilutes the market, it saturates the market, and it ruins the pricing across the market. So what the land department and the DLD, the Dubai Land Department, have done is it's an online system where we send over a Form A, which is an agreement to advertise or an agreement to sell. And that's all signed off, which goes to their phone, and it's a text that they click a button on. So there is no way for brokers to forge and make things up. But what that is in that period when the government had announced that, it was only us telling the sellers and the landlords. And we were sitting there and they're like, nope, that's not what I did last week. And we're sitting going, yeah, but that's what you need to do now. Well, I don't know. And also that process for them of anything going to a phone via a text message to accept was what they would expect if they were committing to a contract. Yeah. Which is what you just said. So for the audience listening, for them, us even mentioning the fact they're going to get this electronic. It was scary. They're like, they're tricking me. we're going through the, and so it was so painful for so long. And now we are at the stage where we've gone through those teething problems and people are getting their heads around it now. And now it's easier.
Yeah.
That being said, you know, you do now have to work 10 times harder to be one of the
3 brokers.
One of the 3, you know, which isn't such a bad thing. I think on that note, I always say to my owners, if your agent has got 10 properties, it's a bit like having 10 children.
Yeah.
Do you know, one's going to go hungry at some point. One's going to need a glass of water and you're going to forget. So actually, if you've got 6, I'm not saying 6, I'm just picking that number, but 6 maybe really good properties and you work really well with those owners and you know that those agents are working on those properties, it's probably better. Like it's a thing I say sometimes, like ask your agent, check, see how many properties they're looking after, see if they can still look after your property on Limetree as well as 3 others on Limetree, or whether they're going to be too stretched. You know?
Completely understand, yeah. No, that's good to see the challenges in the industry that we might face. Thanks, Rose.
No problem.
So, Rose, is this job life-changing? And what's your why? What keeps you doing this day to day? And obviously, I'm getting different answers from different brokers. And when people move to Dubai or when we're doing our performance coaching, we talk about why quite often. What's your why?
My why is... it's always about the house, isn't it? I want to have my own house with a garden. And then I don't have to invite anybody in. I'm joking. No, I want to have my own house, and I've got, you know, that is my driving force. I also want to see my parents see that happen. That's very important to me. And they're the 2 main drivers. There's the other one in the background, which is now that I've kind of bridged the whole numbers thing that I spoke about, and, you know, I've been earning a certain amount, I've got to a certain point. Now it's like, right, re-education of how you utilize what you've earned and make it make more money for you. That's the stage I'm in now, which I'm now trying to get my head around a little bit more, right? It's not something, to touch on your first question, my background, my home life, it's completely removed from anything that my family can even talk to me about, right? So it's a little bit like, you know, when you come from that background, which I'm sure many people listening to this podcast will have the same, you know, your parents don't come from white collar jobs, they're not like business people, they've not got any of that kind of acumen, they love you to death, but they just can't help you. You got to try and find it out for yourself. And so now I'm at that point where I'm kind of like looking at, well, how do I do that? Because I would like to have a business. It might not necessarily be that I want to do real estate as a business because I'm already in the business. But again, going back to that wellness, something that actually really makes my heart sing. In order to do that, how do I get there? You know, so for me, real estate has brought me back around in a full circle to very, well, the potential is more than what I earned before. But in my 20s, you see, when I was a singer, before I had all of the issues with my voice and I had all the surgery and all this stuff that happened to me, which was like a footballer having an injury and then your career's over. Basically, I went from earning a lot of money as a singer, because I did, to earning not a lot of money. And I had that taste quite early on. And then I think over the space of 10 years, I tried to convince myself that I would maybe go down this avenue or that avenue and it would be enough. But it wasn't, because I knew I was going to really struggle to get that house and do these things that I wanted to do on those kinds of salaries. So for me now, I know that property can get you there. It can get you there quicker. I like it. I like, you know, I like working with people. I like going and being able to be in these places and see, you know, something from, like in my area, villa that's literally dust, and then all of a sudden it appears and it's amazing. All of that I love. But realistically behind it is, it's the ability to be able to achieve the kind of money that I can earn in a shorter space of time, which sees me move closer towards those goals in a shorter space of time. And that is really honestly the truthful answer.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so we want the house. We also might have plans for following the passion of what your business was, which I love. And Dubai and real estate is a financial vehicle to get you to these places. Where do you see yourself in a year? And just know, with this being recorded and, you know, we can look back at it, I'm excited to look back at it in a year and see if we've achieved it.
I want to have the house.
Okay.
My first house. At the minute, I'm trying to work out whether I just need to go for it and buy that apartment and kind of work that way. There was a certain, there's something I've noticed, let's say, in my area that I'm anticipating could mean that the prices could change a little bit, just to do with a development that's popping up and how I think that might affect things. Anyway, spoiler alert. If that would be the case, then I would probably look at that.
Okay.
But in a nutshell, I want to be able to have bought the house next year or a unit.
So a year from now,
Correct.
I'm going to be sitting here and we're going to say, did you buy that house? And you're going to say,
yes.
Good. Right. Brilliant. That's what I want to hear. You know what I mean?
No, that's fine. Fully prepared to put that on camera. It's probably the kick I need.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed. So Rose, only 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, you decided to make the jump into real estate. What advice would you give to someone who is looking for the right company to work for?
I think if you can, when you go into your interview, you should be smart and you should try and think when you're walking through the office. You should try and look a little bit at the tables and maybe ask if you can kind of just observe a little bit. I know it's hard because it's kind of like you want to keep that sales floor a little bit discreet and private, but I think you can sort of tell a little bit of a dynamic. And if, for example, if I was hiring someone, you've got two options. You either tell that person what they're doing, or you have the kind of person that when you tell them what they're doing, they have the guts to stand up and say, actually, no, I want to be on this table.
Yeah.
I want to do this. Yeah. Which I think a director like you'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like you might have an idea for someone, but if someone was like, absolutely not, I want to do this, you kind of got to admire that a little bit because it's all.
Well, I'd admire it, but they better perform.
Yeah, of course.
If they're going to be that ballsy.
Of course, but I just mean it's you've kind of got to look at it as if you look around the room, you can kind of see it's a bit like Big Brother house, you know. You kind of like there's different personalities. You can't always tell that until you get to know people, and you can't always tell where you're going to work well. And sometimes there's a little bit of timing in this job. Like you could be there and you could really stick it out and work really hard, and then all of a sudden, you know, people might move or shift and something might change, and then bang, you know, you're kind of in a really good position. Sometimes it takes time for that to happen. Other times, like for example, with me in my journey, I knew that I liked the job. I wasn't interested in thinking I'm going to go to another company because it's just still going to be a company, but there's always things you like and you don't like. Yeah. But I knew I wasn't in the right area at the right time. I personally knew I needed to move and make that shift to Marina to show you guys that once I at least got a listing, I could make it happen.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did that. And I've said to people before when they've come to me, of which they have, I've said, if you start feeling it's hard and you're feeling like this, don't jump ship and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Ask to go to a different area first. Exhaust every option you can. And actually, the people that have done that have actually stayed and done well.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I'd agree with that. And Rose, definitely, when we look back at your journey, you know, in Marina, you went like 0 to 100 in the Marina. And then once you were performing already, you then said, now I want to jump to the bigger ticket items, which is where you are now. You didn't just go, you know, not performing, then go, I want to go to Jamaica Golf Estates. You followed the journey, and now where you are is obviously phenomenal. So yeah, brilliant advice for someone who's looking for the right company. I think there's plenty of knowledge in there. So that broker, they might have started at White & Co, they might have started at another company, that's irrelevant. What advice would you give to a new, young, hungry broker? They've came to Dubai. What advice would you give them starting in real estate?
Well, you have got to just follow the process initially. It's literally that. You know, you guys always said at the start, and it's absolutely true. You need to connect basically as much as you can all day long. So if initially you know it's only by making calls to people and getting to know people on the phone, then do that. You know, do that as much as you can. But if for any reason you do feel that you're not really always getting what you want, the best thing to do is instead of letting your mindset take over because you're listening to no all the time on the phone, which is like negative mindset, and it can start to grate on you. So you've got to find those moments where you go, right, how am I going to structure my week? I'm going to listen to no's and maybe get a couple of yeses. But if I'm feeling like that, then there are ways to connect with people when you're out. You just got to have the guts to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could be in the gym in the morning and just like challenge yourself to be like, I'm going to go up and speak to 2 people. Because realistically, if you did that, 5 days out of the working week, 6 days out of the week, one person is going to say something to you about property.
Yeah.
Because also, especially in Dubai, because majority of people are from everywhere else. So they're either renting or they're thinking about buying.
Definitely.
So yeah, rather than just thinking about it as like calls, then when you get a bite, then someone says, right, okay, I trust you, you're going to put it on, it's going to become an advert. It's like connections at all times, just contact, interactions. And it's very easy when you are in a job which requires you to be on your phone at all times, to be very much in your phone. And I've recently been like, right, you're getting stressed out, but actually just be in the room, be wherever you are, and look up, look out of your phone, be out of your phone and see what happens, because things happen, you know? Yeah. But if you're not open to seeing it, you don't notice it. So yeah, just that when you start, follow the process that you taught, make the calls, get to know people, it will come. But if you're getting discouraged by it, then you've got to try and just do it in different ways. You've got to be present and be out and talk to people.
Definitely. I 100% agree. The processes that we teach, 9 out of 10 people, you follow that, it's going to work. But you always get that one outlier who suddenly they go, I don't really like doing it that way. And they go away and make it work. But the thing is, if all 10 went away and tried to do it that different way, 9 would fail and 1 would do well. So yeah, Rosa, I think if you can find a good combination between that, and as you do this job longer, which you found, and which most of the high performing experienced brokers have found, they hardly need to lift their fingers to make a call now. Most of the time the business is coming at you guys now.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. But I think, also things are in cycles. Like, that's the thing about this job. Like, you can get to a certain point, but then you realise you always go back to square one a little bit, because at the end of the day, people move on. So you might go back. You have to go back to basics. You do have times where you do have to sort of go back to that again. But I suppose the thing is, if you pick somewhere, or if you start somewhere in an area and you're not sure if it's for you, keep going with it, make it work, make the money. Then I think for sales, that's what I'd say. I've said to people, pick somewhere that you love, because you want to be there all the time. Like, you need to want to be there all the time, because then you know everything about it, and it isn't hard to talk about it.
It's actually something Jason said a couple of podcasts ago. He said, energy doesn't lie. And you can know every single thing about an area, but if your energy doesn't show that you love it as well, then it's no good. And that's the feeling that you get down at Junior Golf Estates with you. It's like people know you adore the environment and the area. Yeah,
the area, the environment, and like when you sat there then and you're doing anything or you're talking, you're enjoying yourself there, so it's attractive. People attract towards that positive energy, right? And then you might, like, I think a couple of weeks ago, I ended up bumping into a buyer who bought in Damac, actually, with me and Davey. I've stayed friends with them, but he was in the clubhouse in JGE with his friends, and we were sat down, and next thing you know, I looked across and he was there. I didn't expect to see him because I've not seen him for a while. And then I'm sitting on the table with them, and the next thing you know, there's like 2 or 3 people he sat with in JGA who have got particular villas that I'm actually looking for at the time. Next, by the end of the night, I'm back at the villa with everybody. The hot tub's there, the champagne's there. Like, I was supposed to be going for like 1 glass of red wine, me, sensible Sally, and like chicken fajitas. And I ended up like rocking in at like 2 o'clock in the morning because it'd been in someone's garden. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, those things happen, but it happened there because I was there.
Yeah, because you put yourself in that environment.
Because I put myself there,
Yeah. Oh, some good wisdom there as well for the people coming in. Yeah, back at hot tubs and champagne parties. Love it. Yeah, no, but you've earned the right to do that. You're a high performing broker. So Rose, we're finding, I'm asking people, is this industry for everyone? I want people to know what they're in for. Is this industry for everyone? Yes, if they want to work hard. No, if they've got zero work ethic. Okay, fine. Something that I often say to the guys in the office, or when I meet new starters, I say, this job is not a hard job, it's hard work. Would you agree with that? And, I think we can teach all the skills. I think we can give all the training. And then I think that once you eventually have that foundation, you can blossom and learn more. But I think work ethic and wanting to learn and gain more knowledge, they're not things we can teach.
No. And it's very true, because there's certain times where I've had people say to me, I need to change careers. I'm really not happy. And then I start thinking, and then I start thinking, actually, I was just about to say to you, why don't you think about, and I don't say it because I actually know that
not right.
As much as I like this person, right, they've got absolutely no work ethic at all.
Yeah.
Right. And they're nice people and I get on with them and they're friends, but they wouldn't last 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I just go,
maybe you should.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I don't want to delve too far into that. It's just a case of, I want people to be prepared, because, we've seen the success stories. Mm-hmm. You sit in that office, the sales board is there and everyone can see what people are earning. And there's nothing that you, Rose, have that the company gives you that we don't give to someone else. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you've now earned the right that you've got other products and you've got so on and so forth. But what I'd say is, someone that comes in, it's not like we go, oh, Rose has got this and you've got nothing. And it's just a case of, if they worked as hard as you and they wanted to gain as much knowledge as you, and they can hopefully do the same as you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's not for everyone.
No, it's not. Let's just go with no.
No. So moving on from the new brokers that come into the market, what makes a top 1% broker? There's 20,000 brokers in the market. Mm-hmm. Half of them aren't registered. And then you've got the other guys and some good companies out there, some great brokers out there. What makes a top 1%?
Why does it always start with top 1% would be always going above and beyond. That's like a very common phrase. I'm not sure if I'll actually like that sentence. I'll think of another one another time. But just like remembering things, details, whether that be detailed in your approach to when they're talking to you and what they're telling you. For example, it's very easy when you listen to a client tell you what they want to sort of go, oh gosh, I need to literally show them everything. And you need to make sure. But I think once you become better at the job, you kind of know how to give people a certain amount of selection and really listen to what they want and give them a little bit of opposite, so they can kind of see the value in what they're getting. And then you re-listen again and fine tune it again. But the main thing is that during that process, that you're listening to them about their families, their children, or their interests. And if you really feel you can connect with them on something, that's what you do, you connect. Because then it doesn't matter if someone else rings up from another agency. They feel loyalty because they've got
a connection with you.
That is actually what I think it is about being the top 1%. You can wear the best suit and you can wear the best watch, and that's great because it's obviously naturally you want to be around someone that cares about how they look and how they smell and all of those things. But I could take someone tomorrow and go and take them to the mall and throw them in a nice suit and give them a nice car and give them. But would I be able to allow them to have the ability to understand that it's a very psychological job, right? And you could say it's manipulative, but if you make manipulative a non-negative word and you put it in a different way, it's actually about being adaptable and listening. And there's always something you can connect with someone on. You might not like some of the things that they like, but there's always one thing, and you only get that by getting to know them properly. And that's usually, I try to work like that, but not as a forced thing, as an organic thing. No,
it's very interesting because I obviously see every agent in the company, and we've just had Jay in before you. And I do have to say that when we talk about brokers who build strong relationships and who have clients who in their phone book would not call anyone else, Jay is one of them and you are one of them. And at the end of the day, I know when I was a broker, I made the big mistake of being a hunter, not a farmer. And I was there about doing the deal now. And that's, I've learned from my mistakes. And that's why now with you guys, we look at what you do and the clients, how they will, go to the ends of the earth just to work with you. And it's amazing to see. So I definitely agree with you that what you're doing is certainly working as far as building relationships. So, Rose, I want to move the conversation away from brokerage and brokering. I know, but we're not going to be talking about real estate for once. What do you enjoy about living in Dubai? What keeps you in this place, and is it home now?
Yeah, it is actually. And again, funny timing, you should ask me that question, because I just said to two of my clients the other day, we were talking about where they're from. They're from the Netherlands, but they've lived in Dubai for 10 years. Prior to that, they lived in Luxembourg, etc., etc. They said they find it strange when people are here and they say home, meaning, say, UK, if they're from the UK or whatever. And I said, but in my 20s, I, when I lived here for 3.5 years, would always say home, meaning Manchester or UK, right? Now, if you say, where do I mean when I say home? I mean here.
Yeah.
But that's because in my mind now, this is home.
Yeah.
Because I felt it, just to see what I mean. So
100%.
that shift is apparent in how I use my language. So why do I love Dubai? Safety has got to be a massive one for me. I think I realised when I went back, having lived here for a significant amount of time, I've got to be honest, I like being able to go in a shop, and I've always got loads of stuff in my arms. I don't know why. I've always got loads of bags, Calum.
I know. I see you coming in the office. There's a laptop.
I'm going to think of a way of sorting out. I just don't want to have like a massive bag. So I've always got bags, and I'll go in somewhere and I'll be like, right, I want to go and get that off there, but I could really just do with leaving these on the floor. And I love the fact that I could just leave them on the floor, walk around the mall or wherever I am, and come back with my strawberries or whatever, and they're still there.
Yeah.
I know that's like a really small thing, but it's not.
But sometimes it is the small things that you're just like, I love this place for
I
that.
love that. I love the fact that if I go to one of my gym classes or my gym sessions and I, again, decide that I'm in a rush and I just put my bag there. We've got lockers, but I'll be honest with you, no one uses lockers in Dubai.
No.
Basically, they put the bags in the lockers and then don't lock the locker.
Yeah.
So it's just shut in a cupboard, basically.
Yeah.
And I just think that is something I don't want to change here. Like, I love that it's a little bit more like, if you do, you're going to be in really big trouble, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think lots of people love that. They love the fact that it's just that bit more strict.
Yeah.
And obviously waking up with sunshine. Yep. It's science, is it?
Yeah.
Not, if anything. So that, and of course, if I want to, which I do most of the time, I want to be outdoors, and therefore the chances are, unless it's right now where it's absolutely boiling hot, which I will still attempt to be outside.
Yeah.
You can be outside. For me, that's absolute perfection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, once you're in your house and you've got your nice back garden.
On my own. And then I'm like, I'm in the house on my
own. Fantastic. So if someone's sitting on the fence right now, Rose, and they're in the UK or wherever it is, and they want to either move to Dubai, or they want to get into real estate, or they just want to get out of their hometown, what would you say to them?
You can always go back home.
Yeah. I agree.
Is that my shortest answer?
That's your shortest answer. Shall we leave it at
that? I want to.
Yeah. Brilliant. Fantastic. That leads me on to my next question, which is a bit of a taboo subject some places, but as we know, the boards are there. We know how much everyone in the company earns because it is performance based. What is the most amount of commission that you've earned in your pocket in a month? So not what goes on the board, in your pocket. You can feel free to answer this. You can feel free to decline. It's whatever you want. But I think it's important that people back home have the transparency.
510,000 AD
dirhams, so that's about £110,000 in a month.
Yeah.
And you used to earn good money as a singer, and I don't want to get into that, but
yeah, but not quite that good.
So not okay. Then I didn't know because I was.
No, I know. Yeah, but I did. But as well, when you're young, you're getting cash like that. I was getting cash off all these jobs, like getting booked to go everywhere, travel everywhere. It was amazing. But then,
that was in a month, obviously. Yeah. So and for anyone that doesn't know, who isn't watching, who isn't privy to the information, Rose is actually our most consistent broker in the company. which is actually fantastic. I love saying that because you're someone that's managed to hit their targets or smash their targets every single month. It's not a one-hit wonder. And it's usually sort of the last day of the month a deal goes in.
I know, I'm always very dangerously close to the end. It's very stressful for me as well, I've got to be honest with you.
Exactly.
Like, when will it flip?
Yeah, no, when's it going to be right at the start?
I don't know why it's always at the end.
But like, I think that's very important because 2.5 years ago, you'd never been in Dubai real estate.
No.
And at some point this year, or was this at the end of last year? This year?
What?
The £110,000. Was that last November, last October?
No, that was this year.
That was this year.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So within 2 years, you've already earned that level of take-home cash in a month, and it's amazing to see. And that brings me on to the final question, which is, what is a quote or a saying that you live by?
Be good, work hard.
Be good, work hard. And who does that come from?
My father.
Father. Well, it's so far working. Thanks so much for doing this, Rose. I know how busy you always are. You're an absolute tornado because you're always running about making things happen. But yeah, I really appreciate you taking your time out to come and do this for us. And I'm sure that anyone viewing will find great value in it. Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it, actually.
Good.
Can I come back again?
Yes. In a year and we'll see the house. We'll do it at the house.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you.